Welcome to a brand new episode of SideQuest Podcast. Listen in and level up. I have a fantastic guest for you today on the show. It's actually two guests, but we'll get into that in just a moment. Let's get through some house notes first. If you're not following me on Twitter, check me out at SideQuestFM. You can also follow me on Instagram as well, SideQuestFM. Head over to Facebook, search for SideQuest Fitness up in the search bar. Like the Facebook page. On Mondays, you'll get updates on podcasts. Tuesdays or Wednesdays, I usually put out a brand new article, but even better than that, on Tuesdays, I put out Taco Camp, where I give you a brand new taco recipe every single week. And then shenanigans throughout the week, where we talk video games, fitness, or just random thoughts that I have. You can also follow me on Snapchat as well, SideQuest Fit, and get a little background view into all the shenanigans that go on in my life every single day. As I mentioned before, I have two great guests for you today. They are the host of the PropaneFitness podcast, but they also do coaching and write as well over at PropaneFitness.com. They are two ridiculously hilarious, some of the most crazy dudes that I ever had a conversation with. We recorded this a few weeks ago. I am whispering just a bit in this episode. I was recording it while on vacation at my in-laws in New Hampshire. So a little bit, I had to be a little quiet as my father-in-law was not awake yet. But Yusef and Jonny of Propane Fitness joined me to chat fitness, writing, putting personality into your writing. And there are some ridiculously hilarious questions that we all pose to each other in this episode because we just had some fun. I think you guys are going to laugh, you're going to enjoy it, but you're going to get a lot of value from this episode. I really hope you guys enjoy it. And if you do, please head over to iTunes and leave a review on iTunes. When you do that, it helps us move up the charts so that more people can hear the amazing guests that I have on each and every week. If you don't have iTunes, you can check out the show on SoundCloud. You can leave a review there. On Stitcher, you can leave a review on Stitcher. And I'm also on Google Play Music. So if you're enjoying the show, head over to Google Play Music and leave a review there as well. Or you can head over to SideQuestFitness.com, click on podcast up at the top of the page, and find all the links to every single episode that has ever been put out, as well as all the show notes. Show notes for this you can get at SideQuestFitness.com/propane. And that way you will get every single study that we talk about. You'll get links to the books that we mentioned, to the videos on their websites, as well as places, links to follow the guys on Propane Fitness. So head over there for all the show notes as well. But I'm going to shut up. Let's get into the show. It's hilarious. It's a good time. And I hope you guys enjoy Jonny and Yusef of Propane Fitness.
Step up and you gotta get it fitness. Host Rob at the moment and the quest is you gotta check it and wreck it. You're breaking personal records and with the help of the guests you won't be guessing on the lessons. That's a +5 fierce. Got a low-key bamf right here. You wanna meet him, there's no better way to greet him than to strike a boss pose. Take a look into the mirror.
All right, guys, welcome to a brand new episode of SideQuest Podcast. I have a fantastic guest for you today. I got to throw in that apostrophe S on there. I love these guys. These are some of my favorite guys to follow on Twitter. They also are two of the best writers in the fitness industry. When you read their stuff, it's short, it's concise, it's to the point. They don't ramble like yours truly, who like finds some like analogy that he wants to go on, and then you're like, I don't care, shut up, get to the point. They're short, they're sweet, they're to the point. They also have a podcast, and they've had guests that I have not had. So eventually someday I might siphon a couple of their guests because they're pretty big names in the industry as well. But we were up early this morning because they are in Britain. But they're like I said, they're fantastic. I love following them on Twitter, reading their stuff. But the Propane Fitness boys joined me this morning on the podcast. Yusef and Jonny, how are you guys doing?
What an intro. We are a fantastic guests.
Short and sweet as well. I don't think anyone's ever called me short and sweet before.
Yeah, Jonny's normally tall and sour, but...
No, yeah, thanks for having us.
Is that tall and sour? Like, is that he walks up to a girl and he's like, hey, I'm tall and sour. She's like, okay. It's
actually the number one question that I get asked over the internet is, why are my legs so long? Seriously.
As a question, if you could just consider the difficulty in answering that, it's a very, very in-depth and tough question to address.
Impossible question.
Why are your legs so long?
I'm trying to imagine, like, what are the smart ass things you want to say, and how many times do you prevent yourself from actually like being the smart ass and saying those things?
Well, that's it. Like, do you take it from an ontological perspective or from an evolutionary one, or don't know how you can start?
Right. How do you answer that? Like, someone asking me, go ahead.
If I answer negatively, then I am tall and sour. So I have to try and I can be tall and sweet. That's what I try and do. Just be as nice as possible.
I like it. Guys, as I said, I love following you guys on Twitter. I love reading your stuff. It really is. It's so well laid out, and it's concise and to the point. How long have you guys been in the game? How did Propane Fitness come about?
Well, so we went to school together a long time ago, and we just were quite frustrated with the state of the fitness industry back then. I think we're still as frustrated with it now, but we just just thought, let's just set up a blog as a sounding board for our own thoughts, just to get stuff down. That started to gain momentum. That was in 2009, and then since then, it's just kind of slowly gained a bit more momentum. I'm very glad to hear that somebody is reading it and enjoys the content.
One reader.
One reader so far.
we couldn't actually figure out from Google Analytics who that one reader was. So it's good to finally meet.
It's awesome. I have it. That is one thing that's interesting. You go to Google Analytics and you're like, wait a minute, someone from like Sri Lanka is reading my stuff. Who is it? No, because you're genuinely like interested. You're like, I want to know who this person is. Like, that's awesome.
The most shredded person in Sri Lanka.
So I love that Yusef, you said that you were frustrated with the fitness industry, and I love your tagline. Propane Fitness, simple rules, dramatic results. And while I was prepping questions, I thought about it. Why does it feel like the world feels like they need dramatic rules to get simple results? Why? But you really don't. Like, people come to me all the time and they're like, "Oh my God, I have to do this. I have to do that. I have to." I'm like, you realize it's really simple, right?
So I think that's it. We've been there, Rob. We have been. We call it bogged down, which is a reference to somebody who. It's a video that we reference on our website. If you search Propane Fitness bogged down, you'll maybe get the idea. But it's just related to thinking that things are a lot more complicated than they are, and we got sucked right into it. And so we wanted to try and save people the pain of going through the same thing. So just distilling things down into the most simple, actionable advice that you can take. And I don't think you're losing anything in the process by doing that.
No, you aren't. And how do you guys do that when you write? Like, when you want to, because I think one thing with the fitness industry you'll notice is some writers are very, very, very long-winded. They want to give you everything that they can, and then there are some who are very brief. They just hit a point and they're done. How long did it take you guys as sort of writers and content creators to sort of figure that out?
I think it's probably due to just pure frustration over time. A lot of our articles are actually moments of self-realization for us, I think. We have this big moment of, it's actually just this. And then we write an article about it. And, one I did recently was about the constant, persistent pursuit of leanness in the fitness industry and how that's put on a pedestal. And the realization that we both had around the same time that actually that is a complete false idea. You get to this point of leanness and all of the associated feelings that you think that will result from being lean are actually far, far away from that position. So, a lot of our writing comes from us having to boil down complex ideas into simplicity, either for our own progress or to help clients overcome obstacles. So I guess it's by accident, I suppose.
I love that article, and I want to, because there was a part of me that wanted to write one similar a long time ago, and then like as I sort of thought about it, I was like, no, I want to look really good naked, but like, I want to be lean, but I want to look good naked. But then people also assume that means like I need to look like an Instagram model, like I need to look like this, and it's not a lot. Like, a couple of bananas and that's half your carbs in a day. Some oatmeal, like you got to really plan it around. And like 225 grams of protein, there's a lot of egg whites in that, and a lot of tilapia.
And when you take carbs that low, it's hard to live like a life that most people would live. Like you can't eat what most people eat. You have to make some restrictions there for sure.
You can't really go out, and fat was still at like 50 grams. And if you were going to like go out to a restaurant, you might as well just like, there's no, you can't really do it. It's very hard. But I think that's something a lot of people don't understand. I think that's something that like, even as we were talking beforehand, as entrepreneurs, people like see your success and think, oh man, they're internet entrepreneurs, they're traveling the world, they're doing this, they're doing that. But what people don't see is waking up at 4 a.m. They don't see the struggles in your own relationships, that you have, or when you don't go out with friends because you're at home working and you're like, oh shit, it's 9 p.m. and I'm still working. Like, people don't see those sacrifices. So you guys started in 2009. Now you've built up. When did you start the podcast? What sort of spurred that to come to fruition?
I think it was basically the thought pattern of other people are doing podcasts. And when we started, it was very it was over a dodgy Skype connection. It was
our first podcast was we bought a roll of string and 2 plastic cups and that's
shouted.
Yeah, so you can probably hear from the audio quality, and then it's gradually built up from them. So now we're using an apple and a banana. So that's a big upgrade for us.
It's like, I think we're trying at the minute specifically to do more podcasts because whenever we ask our readers or audience what they want more of, it's always the podcast. And it's usually they want to hear more of Yusef and I discussing things that are non-fitness related, which is heartbreaking, to be honest. But it's the podcast has been kind of like always in the background, but never really a focus for us. And at the moment, I think we are plowing more effort and time into improving the quality and the content of that.
It gives us an appreciation for what you're doing because it's difficult to be consistent with these things and as well to get guests on and arrange them at the right time in different time zones and the rest of it.
Difficult.
So good job on doing this. I think it's a great thing that you're doing.
Yeah, it can be fun sometimes when you're like, oh, I'm gonna stay up till 11 p.m. because you're talking to someone in Australia and like they're essentially a day ahead of you. But
you've still got to be like lively and make conversation.
Yeah, you can't just be like, oh, hey guys, I'm really tired. Just so everyone knows, I'm doing this with no coffee in my system right now. So don't ask me how this is actually like how my brain is functioning.
Doing it with no coffee, is that something you've given up?
No. Okay, so I have 6 rules. I'm still working on a couple of them. I have rules for my life. I had Craig Ballantyne on the show about a month and a half ago, and reading his book, he has some rules for life, and he challenged me to come up with my own. So I've been developing my own. One of them is that I will write for 30 minutes every day. Period. Like it can just be like I'm sitting on a beach and looking at it doesn't matter. Like it's just I write at some point. Writing is something that's become very important to me. Always has been, but disappeared for a long time. I will not drink shitty coffee. I won't do it. Like I'm not going to drink the stuff my grandmother has in a can. Nope, won't do it. So there is no good coffee here right now, so I have to go wait, and I won't break my rule. And then things like cell phones are not allowed in the bedroom. The bedroom is for 2 things: sleeping and fucking. Like that's it. Like I'm not going to Facebook. I'm not tweeting. I'm not doing any of that. And then a couple other random sort of things. Do you guys have things that sort of guide your principles that guide you in your life or personal life or in your own fitness?
I don't think we could boil it down to like a set of rules that we stick to, but I think we're both very, very interested in self-improvement, self-development, and we're always, I think probably 50% of the time we speak to each other, it's business, 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 and then the other half is, meditation or journaling or stretching. These other practices that we're constantly trying to develop. One of the reasons I asked you about the coffee thing was that's something I've recently reduced a lot in my life, and working around wake up times and things like that is again, that's stuff I've written about before. So we're definitely always trying to expand on that. But something that I find really difficult actually, and something I want to ask you about, is you have these 6 rules. Do you not find it difficult to keep to them every single day, every single week? The thought bias that comes along with you set intentions and then holding those intentions across time.
I mean, yeah, you're not. It's funny when you. So Craig has like 12, and one of them is I will wake up every day at 4 p.m. or 4 a.m. and I'm in bed by 8 p.m. and I'm like, the fuck? Like, no, nah, dude, I'm not like that's a rule I can't establish. It is difficult, but I think that it's like having a gym session and being like, all right, well, I missed today, or you have a goal and then you have a day where you just blow it out of the water nutritionally, instead of being like, oh, well, fuck it, now I'm just going to continue doing what I did for the last 24 hours. Like, you get back on the horse.
Okay.
The rules are there to guide you, and one of the biggest things I've learned in this mastermind is that rules are not meant to be broken, they're meant to be followed, and the more sort of rules and guidelines you have, the more freedom you actually get from having those rules. Because if you just had anarchy in your life, you would probably just sit around and waste time and be like, well, I could do this, but I could do that. I could do and then you just have indecision fatigue, and then you're like, oh, I'm so tired and I haven't done anything. But having those rules allows you some freedom. So it's just something I've tried to do. If I miss it, whatever, I'm not mad at myself. I just start the next day.
I think that's a good point about decision fatigue as well. I'm guessing you've seen the study on the juries that generally, that generally rule people guilty in the afternoon hearings compared to the morning ones. And I mean, that's quite a concrete and scary thing. And it definitely is the case that when you sit down, you're like, right, I've got an hour free. If you don't know what to do, the willpower required to actually start something is always so much greater than if you've just got something scheduled in your calendar and you know what you have to do. Just eliminates that decision. You just get on with it. And I think often half the battle with people getting to the gym is having a ritual for it and knowing that, this time I do this, or even having a program to follow. And I don't believe in intuitive training or just YOLOing it, because it's too easy, unless you're a very special kind of person, to just always err on the side of doing less. Whereas if you come in, you're like, right, I've got these boxes to tick, then I'm out of the gym. You know when to start, you know when to stop. And I think people struggle on either side of it, where they either do too much and can't recover from it in work and training and sleep and whatever, or do too little. And if that happens consistently, then the average volume is always going to be skewed.
The YOLOing, I almost cracked up when you said that one, because I've kind of been doing that the last, because I finished a program like a week and a half before the photo shoot, and I was like, oh, I'm just gonna kind of do whatever, because it's a week. Like I'm just gonna do whatever, and I'm just floundering around. I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to do cleans. I'm just going to clean for like 15 minutes a day. You know what? Here's a good idea. I'm going to put 135 pounds on the bar, and I'm going to perform squats in 10 minutes. How many reps can I do in 10 minutes? I can tell you what happens a day or two after that. Your testosterone goes through the fucking stratosphere, and I wanted to fuck and kill and if there had been a bear the next day, I would have fought a bear. I would have ripped his claws out, stabbed him in his eyes, and fed his eyes to him. That's how intense I was from that. It was fucking crazy. Anyways, well, we're.
I'm just.
I was like, what do I say? Is he okay? Have you ever seen The Revenant?
I have not seen The Revenant yet. It's on my list.
So there's a scene in that where he fights a bear. I'd strongly suggest checking that out, because I think there's this big fitness thing in the fitness community of like, yeah, so strong I'd fight a bear. Then you watch that and it's the most leveling scene I think I've ever watched.
No, I mean, I would never. I'm not an idiot. I know that a bear could kick me ass. I would never. It's like, that's the reason I don't go in the ocean, because like if a shark comes up, I'm fighting on his territory. I cannot I can punch him in the face, but he's going to eat my hand. Like, I'm not going to beat a shark.
You also don't know what squat program that shark has been doing. Like the last few days. Like if that shark has done 10 minutes of AMRAPs the 2 days prior,
Not to mention bulletproof coffee, creatine,
MCTs. Yeah, it might even be on like beta alanine, and in that case, like you just don't even
done for.
Yeah,
absolutely done for.
He's got the beta alanine tingles.
Sharks are literally the most scary thing.
Hands
down.
Terrified.
To be honest, big squid freak me out way more. Like, the really big, slow moving, like, oh.
So if you're in the sea, you'd rather a shark than a big squid?
Yeah. Shark, it's over quickly. Big squid, you're just going to get squeezed. Horrible.
Or tickled.
Or tickled, yeah.
Tickled and squeezed at the same time. It's like horrible.
Horrendous.
So
I'm glad, by the way, Rob, that we've gone in this direction. Just I was thinking, like, so having heard a couple of the podcasts, and I'm like, you know what, me and Jonny are probably the most boring guests that you're going to have on here, because we are so out of like any kind of pop culture, gaming culture, comics, and any of that stuff. We're like so out of the loop, and we were like, oh god, he's going to ask us about like, have we seen Star Wars, and I was like, you know what.
Even if you were like,
what that is.
What are you? Even if you were like, what are your top 10 fat loss tips? You'd go, right, well, calorie balance, and then training. And that's about it. So yeah, I think talking about sharks and squid, we're perfectly.
I have no problem. Like, hey, I've always said this. It's like 2 people, 3 guys in this instance, sitting at a pub having a beer. Wherever we go in conversation is where we go. Like, I think that's one thing people forget. Like, you listen to a fitness podcast and you're like, oh yeah, fitness. No, there's more to life than fucking lifting weights. Like,
yeah.
And it's something that I get yelled at all the time. My wife is like, people want to know more about you, Robbie. Like, they don't really like, yeah, it's great that you post all this stuff on social. Like, look at me lift this and look at me do that. But like, people are genuinely interested in like other things. So be more. And that's something that, even John has told us a lot as well. Write about, issues that you feel personally. Write the truth, and people want to know that. People don't buy coaching, they buy coaches. They want to know that you're a human being. So if you guys don't do a lot of pop culture, and obviously we know you're afraid of squid and sharks. So if you're afraid of either of those, these are the guys to train you. But how do you bring out your non-fitness things in your writing, or in your how do you bring your personality out?
So we actually we were asked in so we put up a poll saying, what do you want the next podcast on? And I guess you're right. Like, if someone's already got a training program, they've got macros, they know what they're doing, and they're sticking to it. Like, there's not a whole lot more you can really tell them in terms of fitness. And so I guess, like, yeah, the top thing that was voted on was a series of would you rathers. And the one question that since we've recorded that podcast, I get so much flack for this, is, and I'd like to ask you this as well, just see what your response is, that a Freaky Friday scenario, your mother and your partner have switched bodies and minds. You have to have sex with one of them to get the correct mind back in the correct body. Which one do you choose?
Who the fuck came up with that question is what I want to know.
There's one person in our free Facebook group who is prolific with asking us like difficult questions. Whenever I ask for content suggestions, podcast suggestions, he's always coming up with. So another example of something he asked us was to wrestle in a paddling pool filled with jelly and film it. So
you can see the recurring theme there.
I thought it was
That's the question, Rob. What would you choose? Because to me, the answer is blatantly obvious. But
So I can see why, it's a difficult question because neither are nice. So I'll explain what I said and I'll say what Yusef said and why what Yusef said is incredibly weird.
You
So
physically have to fuck your mom, even though it's mentally your girlfriend or wife.
yeah.
Or you physically.
So that's that. The first one is definitely hands down the best scenario because you can
Because you can close your eyes. Like, as long as my eyes can be closed, like, it's okay.
reason with your partner and say, this is just something we normally do. You're going to experience the same thing. I'm going to have to go through some temporary discomfort. At the end of it, everything's still fine again. In the other scenario, you've just got this awkward conversation with your mum for the rest of your life. But Yusef went with the mum and the girlfriend's body because he's all about temporary pleasure and he can't.
Categorically, like your mum would get over it. Like you've got to, hopefully, like you can sit and work through that. But
there are so many horrible things that just like popped into my head that just are probably not ever appropriate to say. That's just weird. That is a very weird question, but
we had to deal with it. So
yeah,
there's things coming up in your head that you feel are not appropriate to say in this podcast, given what it is. That's like maybe it must be serious
absolute darkness. Yeah.
Yeah, I have a very, very weird dark mind sometimes.
Well, so does Yusef, clearly. clearly. But how do you guys bring your is it due to this one person in your Facebook group who asks you these weird questions? Like, I think, to be honest, it's just been a fairly organic thing for us. When we started writing, we started doing podcasts, it was just tips for fat loss, tips for strength training, very mechanical, not much personality. And I think over time, just because you have this realization that it all does boil down to a few simple things, how often can you write about those simple things in a different way? You can either talk about the actual required actions and then how to implement those actions in the real world. Once you've done that, I think the things that we write that resonate the most with people are stories about us. So things that are just true. I wrote an article about, my journey through fitness and what fitness did for me. The articles that we write that are like that are like from the heart, I guess, a better way of saying it, always tend to resonate better. And then when it's just us being us on a podcast, downloads increase, we get better responses from them than if it's like, 3 squat tips and stuff like that. And we do try and balance the content out, but I think just being ourselves and writing about stuff that interests us is easier for us to do than to kind of force a personality or a.
I suppose also we've both struggled with we've both worked desk jobs in the financial sector. We've both studied alongside working and training and so on. I've fasted through Ramadan several years in a row. I'm not actually doing it this year, but that's something that was relatively popular on the website. I think people wanting to know how to incorporate their training into fasting over Ramadan. So I think we're quite lucky in that we've been through quite a lot of stuff that we can then apply a propane twist to.
So why propane? Like, was there a million other things you could have come up with for fitness? Jonny and Yusef, or what?
That's catchy.
I don't. There's hundreds of things that you. So why propane?
So the story, I think when people start these businesses, they always have like a really interesting story behind it. For us, we were sat in Yusef's parents' house, and we were trying to think of a name for the I don't know, it was Blogger at the time, like a Blogger template.
So Jonny started, he set up a little old Blogger template called Optimum Fitness Systems or something.
Yeah.
And then a month later, I was like, Jonny, I Googled that phrase and it's 10 million results came up. And then just as a joke,
I said, how about Propane Fitness? And Yusef and the other guy that we started with both went, yeah, I quite like that. So it was a sarcastic suggestion. and that's now our business name.
Although my flatmate absolutely ruined my day when she was like, because our logo was red and purple, and she was like, Yusef, propane actually burns at quite a low temperature, and it actually burns yellow, not purple. Like,
it's used for like patio heaters and really like low requirement energy.
Someone's
like rocket fuel, but unfortunately not.
Well, I love that it was just a random sort of thing. It reminds me of Led Zeppelin got their name because someone was like, "Man, you guys are going to go down like a Led Zeppelin." Same thing with like Rush. They had no name for the band, and I think it was someone's brother came in. They're like, "Oh man, your guys' show is such a Rush," and it's like they just randomly take this name from that one moment. And that's sort of where the band name comes from. It's nothing crazy. It's nothing ridiculous. It's just like one person says something. It's like, no, all right, we'll go with that.
Yeah.
So you guys write a lot about, exercise and dieting for lifestyle. And we've already talked about that, with the leanness thing. And like, you can't really be 6% body fat and go out on a Friday night with your friends and have a good time, because you're not going to be drinking beer at all. And if you are, you're going to be an angry asshole that no one wants to hang around. So why do you think so many people struggle to marry exercise and diet with lifestyle?
I think it probably boils down to the idea that when people start dieting, training, or like any kind of fitness pursuit, they are seeking to improve like their impressions of self-worth or their relationships or how they're perceived. And so they go down the stock template, which is fat loss. And I think with that stock template comes these ideas that you have to be super restrictive with lots of things. So whether it be like gluten, carbohydrate, alcohol, sugar, trans fats. And so they go down this path of restriction. And while they're on this process, they experience all the hunger, the anger towards people who are drinking beer, the anger towards people who are eating pizza. And they actually get pulled further and further away from self-worth and improving their relationships until they either give up or they're kind of forced, I think, to then think, okay, well, I'm at this point. How do I then change to marry my life with my fitness journey? But I actually think that process, if you try and go through that process yourself organically, can take, it's taken us 15 years combined to sort of go through all of the mistakes that I think are so readily available online, especially because there's profit in the idea of there being a magic bullet and the idea of there being a magic solution. To realize that all of that doesn't work, or to realize all of that actually just makes you feel worse, and then flip it all on its head and end up with a simple selection of things that you stick to. So I think it's why do people do it? I think it's because, or why do people struggle? I think it's just the availability of information that is not necessarily designed to help you do that.
It's a horrendous mismatch, actually. I think that the information is specifically designed to keep you spinning your wheels as long as possible and keep you in the fitness system and paying money for supplements you don't need and the newest program and the rest of it.
Yeah, it's ridiculous how much of that is out there, and people who just sort of prey on that and get you in on this and then in on that, and oh well, you can move from this to that and this to that. Like, it really comes down to just, I think it's Eric Bach. I think it's just the tagline on his new site, like the ruthless pursuit of the basics, like leads to results. Like you don't need all these crazy exercises. You don't need all these crazy, like, just the basic movements, squats, presses, pushes, pulls, like that's it. You could have 6 things you could do for the rest of your life, and you could maintain some sort of physical, health. You don't need, a P90X or an Insanity or, the CrossFit. Like, you don't need to move from one thing into the other. But the gray isn't sexy. It's we oddly enough, I'm writing an article about this, but we live sort of in, oh God, my wife has influenced so much of my mind in the last 2 years. It's been ridiculous. But we do sort of live in these sort of binaries, good and evil, black and white, up and down, left and right. No one talks about in the middle, and then the gray just isn't sexy. And people come to us and they're like, but how do you do it? How do you do it? Well, you tell them and it's so simple. They're like, well, that sounds boring. Like, no, that's like, I want an extreme. You got to give me an extreme. And that's really not what it is. And it does sort of take time to realize that.
I think it's consistency in the grey, isn't it? Rather than spending periods of time in the black and then being forced to the white and then being forced to the black again. And I think that's where most of the fitness industry stays, is in this state of flux between two extremes, overeating and then crash dieting, overeating, crash dieting. Yeah. The more consistently you can stay in this kind of, I don't necessarily like the idea of everything in moderation, but I think a lot of things, when practiced in moderation, are actually not damaging behaviors whatsoever and actually quite positive.
Yeah. I have a friend who says, practice moderation, including moderation. Like there are some times where, you have to go a little crazy and ridiculous. You're seeing old friends, you're at a wedding. I mean, dear God, if there are meatballs at a wedding, I'm crushing, like, macros be damned. I'm crushing some meatballs and whiskey. Like, if there's an open bar, don't tell me I can get drunk for free if I'm not paying for it. Listen, Father of the Bride, thank you so much, because I'm going to take your free gift and down all of it. But one of the things a lot of people struggle with, and something I, even as a new entrepreneur and a business person, I struggle with failure. So how do you guys handle failure? You've been going since 2009. I'm sure when you started, it was like, oh God, no one's reading this blog. Like, come on. Like, why don't people like, how do you guys deal with failure?
So I think this is a relatively recent realization of having process goals rather than outcome goals. And I think if you set up with outcome goals, it's always going to be a source of frustration because there's so many variables that aren't in your control. And when they go wrong and something falls on its face, you blame yourself. And I'm not saying absolve yourself of all blame. I'm saying, like, have a system, stick to the system. How well did you stick to it? If you did stick to it properly, and at the end of the outcome, you have some data on whether it was well executed or not. Regardless of the outcome, if you're on the right track, then fine. If you find at the end of a sample period that you followed the system and it hasn't been taking you on average to the right result, then that's when you need to change the system rather than try and micromanage every day along the way. I don't know if that makes sense. So I guess you could apply that to a training program, or to, I suppose, failure in anything like studying, big one, where, like, you wouldn't make changes to your training program in the middle of your volume phase because, like, yeah, you're failing reps. Okay, at the end of the 8-week cycle, be like, right, what was wrong there? Were my training maxes too high? Was the prescribed volume too much to recover from? Was the frequency too high? Like, whatever it is. And then you can evaluate after having gathered data rather than just blaming yourself on the micro scale every day and then making changes and not knowing who to blame.
I think with us that applies to, like, Propane Fitness and us managing that. The stuff we can't control is the lag, the outcome of our behaviors. So if we focus all the time on how many clients we have or how many people read the website or how many podcast downloads we get, and we just end up being frustrated in that and consider that as failure, then it's just a self-perpetuating cycle where you end up then changing systems, reading blogs all the time, looking for the next new method. Whereas instead, I think what we tried to do is set, as Yusef says, process, and then we measure how consistent we are with that process, try and improve that because we can control that. And then at the end, we measure a few things, look back and say, what happened? And then at that point, you have an idea of, was it the system or was it our implementation? If it was our implementation, we can change that. If the system didn't work, we make one small change, repeat. It's maybe a bit more of a long-winded answer than you were expecting.
No, I think that it's most people get a failure, and I focus, I think it's hard at the beginning because you're like, how many people are on my site? Oh, I've got 13 people on today. No one even knows I'm here, but my stuff is so good. Why doesn't the world want to read me? Podcast downloads. Oh, well, I only had 45 today. Well, today, focusing on the numbers. It's like the scale. Like, I have clients who focus on the scale. My number one rule. I really wish there was a way with online clients I could send them dynamite in the mail and then get them to record themselves blowing their scale up, because getting rid of that one piece of of annoyance, as I like to call it, will free you and your mind to focus on the things that matter, like hitting your workouts, hitting your nutrition. Like, don't use that as your determination of success. You know, that's not what matters. But I think too many people fall into that, and one failure leads to another failure. But small wins can lead to larger wins over time. But failure sucks, and too many times we just think that's all we're ever going to be. All right,
Something we work on. Sorry, go on.
No, go ahead. I was going to move us into some fun questions, but I'll finish your thought.
Something we work on with clients a lot is actually the idea of, if someone has an attachment to their scale weight, for example, or they have an attachment to the way they look, we find that generally speaking, that attachment or that emotional response is actually indicative of something that is much deeper and underlying. And generally speaking, it's one or two things that recur in someone's life. So if they have an attachment to the scale weight, it might actually be that what the issue they have is their desire to control things. So it might be that I'm worried my scale weight has gone up because I'm worried that this process isn't working, because I'm not in control of the process, because I don't trust you. And then maybe that actually what you need to do is work on them and how they feel about you and your process. Maybe they need more evidence that your process has worked for other people so that they can then trust your opinion when you say the scale weight doesn't matter. And I think that we find that control or the desire for approval, those core things tend to come to the surface, and that's actually what the way people feel about certain things is just reflected in different aspects of life. So we actually end up working with people on how to manage those feelings and those thoughts, rather than the scale weight's annoying me or my squat felt heavy today. And it's always comes down to a few core things.
And the whole point, I guess, of hiring a coach is to outsource that anxiety and that stress of worrying about your weight. And then if you've hired a coach, but you're still concerned that you hit your calories, but you went up 200 grams overnight, then that defeats the purpose. Then you've just got two people worrying about the same thing. And I think being able to just say, like, if you fully trust the process and you trust the system, then we can take a step back, look at the larger picture and manage things on that basis rather than worrying about the individual fluctuations.
Yep, I agree. All right, so a couple of fun questions, then we'll move back into a few things. If you guys could go anywhere in a time machine, where would you go?
Goodness me.
Nowhere in the past. The past is rubbish. Like, everyone's just chopping each other's heads off and
chopping each other's heads off.
They love that.
Yeah, I think I would quite like to go, and this is going to sound like I'm doing it just to benefit myself, but I quite like to see the end result of the way technology is currently progressing. Like, I think the way that is it Moore's law, the idea that technology progresses at an exponential rate.
Okay,
something like that. I probably butchered that. We'll get hate mail now, but so the idea that technology is progressing faster than we can conceive, right. And that in 10 years' time, the average Apple Mac will be able to process faster than the human brain. I would quite like to go maybe like 30, 40 years in the future to just see what technology is like.
So just a caveat to what I think will happen there. So a gripe that me and Jonny have is that we both have iPhones, which are supposedly the pinnacle of modern technology. Right. Yet whenever we try and call each other, the call's dropping. We're both calling each other at the same time, and like you can't sustain a phone call, and you end up hanging up with your face or something. And you think, like, guys, stop bringing out all these new fancy emojis and new features in your operating systems, and just make it possible to make a proper phone call, and then you can focus on the other stuff. Yeah. I guess the same applies with clients as well, doesn't it? Like, if they're worried about their creatine intake, but they're not hitting their calories.
Yeah, and that's the truth. Like, there are so many things that people try and add in and do this and do that, and supplements are one of the first questions I get, like one of the most popular questions I get, or hey, can I do this in a few weeks? Like, what can I do? I want to do, like, well, one, you got to start, and two, like, you don't need all this stuff. Like, just focus on do the things that work, and communication is what the iPhone is about. But People are like, oh, apps and photos and this and that. And like, well, but you're right. Like, I can't hold a phone call with someone because the fucking phone doesn't want to work.
If you wouldn't mind just sending a letter to Apple for us saying exactly that.
Well, that's why we're going in the future.
I see, just so we can...
If they haven't fixed it.
If they haven't fixed it. The interesting thing about that is if you think about this, the icon for the phone will eventually have to change because younger kids have no fucking clue what, like, they don't know what that symbol means. Like
that is interesting.
Yeah.
The save icon as well, like a 3.5-inch floppy disk.
Yes. Yeah.
Wow.
They don't know what a floppy disk is.
Even like the open button being a folder and things like that. The idea of a paper folder or dealing with paper at all.
Yeah, that's true. All of that will change it at some point.
Where would you go if you could go anywhere in time?
And
no one ever asked you that.
That's I've had a few people say they'd go to the future, and I feel like that is where I would want to go. Like really far in the future, one, to see if we like actually kill ourselves, or if like some meteorite comes in, or if maybe there is an alien invasion. I would want to see where humanity goes. The past is intriguing to me, but I don't know, man. Like what happens after I die? Like that, what my story has ended, but how has the human story continued? I think the future, let's say like 3,000 years in the future. That's where I want to go. The sun's not going to do too much in 3,000 years. It's not like I'm going to go to when like the Earth is being swallowed by a giant red star. But like how has technology changed? Are we still human? Are we robots? Like, have the robots taken over? I don't know, Elon Musk. Maybe they have. Yeah, that would be fun to go to the future. So I agree with you guys on that. All right, a couple more fun questions. If you could be a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, what kind of jelly would you be, and who would you want to eat you?
So first huge obstacle to this is I have a peanut allergy.
Oh, well, darn. Okay.
That's very offensive, Rob.
But I'll answer it as though it's something else. So what was it? You're a peanut butter and jelly sandwich.
Yeah, or your favorite sandwich. If you could be your favorite sandwich, describe how you would be your favorite sandwich, and who would you want to eat you? Like, if a famous person could eat you.
Speed of your sandwich consumption. Jonny has an uncanny ability to
eat sandwiches.
Yeah, I've never seen anything like it.
Yeah, I do. I mean, they're nice, aren't they? So I think my favourite sandwich is it's probably quite boring, actually. Chicken and bacon.
Oh, that sounds amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like chicken, bacon, mayo on, probably with ciabatta bread.
Consumed in under 12 seconds.
Consumed in under 12 seconds, yeah. And who would I want to eat me?
Yeah.
Well, not me, because...
Not you. You take 3 hours to do it.
Bacon. It's Ramadan.
God, this is a really tough question. You think of the sandwich first, and I'll think of who I want to eat me.
Okay.
It's not difficult. That part's the easy part.
Okay. Oh, what? You want me to think of a sandwich?
Yusef, describe this, what kind of bread, what kind of peanut butter, what kind of jelly?
Out of all the questions you've asked us, this is the
hardest one.
Definitely the toughest. Probably the toughest question I've ever been asked. Whenever I get a sandwich, I'll just go all in. I'll go to the Subway and they'll be like, what would you like? Just
everything.
Put everything in, please.
So all of it.
I'm pretty indiscriminate. I'm an equal opportunity sandwich, I think. So I'm a bit, or a sandwich slut, I guess, whichever way you want to look at it.
Okay, so you haven't answered the question.
So just sandwich, everything in, eaten by anyone. That.
Wow. Wow, great answer.
Eaten by anyone. Okay, all right.
Jonny's struggling still.
He's still struggling?
I want to say someone like the Queen or like David Cameron.
What, okay. David Cameron?
I think just to have a chat with him. But then I'm a sandwich, aren't I?
He wouldn't eat you. He'd be like, "Oh my god, a talking sandwich." I'm not gonna.
You have that reaction.
Yeah, so some people might eat it out of fear. They'll be like, I'm going to quickly
eat
eat
this.
this.
I'm gonna quickly
I think
consume this
someone
sandwich.
really important and someone that it's like a bit intriguing. Like it'd be a bit intriguing to see inside, like where the Queen would eat a sandwich, for example.
As in inside her digestive tract.
As in inside Buckingham Palace.
Okay.
No.
Because you wouldn't see much of Buckingham Palace. You'd see her.
Well, I've got to be taken into Buckingham Palace.
You've got,
Otherwise-
yeah. You'll
otherwise how am I
be
gonna
in a bag
get
or something.
there?
Though you wouldn't just be loose.
Well, that's part of the question that wasn't described at the beginning.
You'd see the Queen's colon, like as you came out.
So Yusef, being the medical student that he is, has ruined the question.
Oh, that's
And the
okay. I
fantasy
said,
rally.
my wife asked me this question randomly. I'm like, okay, I have to include this in the podcast. And when she asked me that, I was like, I mean, Harrison Ford, because it's the closest I would ever get to like Han Solo.
That's
And then
good.
my immediate response was, wait a minute. You then have to think about like whose ass do you want to like be shat out of eventually?
Mm-hmm.
Like whose digestive tract do you want to go through?
I'm glad you also came to that conclusion.
The Queen is probably going to be a very like delicate situation, like very nice bathroom.
Yeah, see, there
Just
you
be
go.
careful here, Johnny. This could be treason. Like Rob, if you deface a coin in the UK, that's considered treason. So,
Oh my goodness me!
we've got to be careful about what we say about Queenie.
I think I've been very nice about it.
Yeah, so you said it's going to be a very delicate, and then you paused and
Said situation.
yeah.
That's hilarious.
If we don't share this on Twitter and Facebook, you know what's happened.
All right, I got you. You guys have been black bagged and taken and hidden somewhere deep in the recesses of a small island off the coast of Scotland,
Yeah.
where the sun never shines. It just
Where
rains.
there's no Twitter.
Basically, you're hanging out with Luke Skywalker from the end of Episode 7 on an island all by yourself.
That's Star Wars, Yusef.
So I have to say this, while reading through some of your stuff, one of the things that, I lost it, was when you mentioned Mick bulking. And I know you guys have done a lot of food experiments. You have a YouTube video about, the 5 years of different things you've done. And I've done some of those. I've done carb backloading, which did it work? I don't know. Who the hell knows?
It's
I've
fun.
yeah. Oh God, yeah, dude. Is it like? Listen, I understand having pre-workout carbs, but there's nothing better than like getting done with a workout and being like, "Here's what I'm eating: pancakes, syrup, and Ben and Jerry's frozen yogurt." Oh my God, I love life. Like it's so much fun.
As long as I have a salad for lunch, then
Yeah.
everything balances out.
There you go. I've done paleo. I've experimented with a lot of things, but what have you guys learned from your experiments? In that time frame, in those diets you've tried, what was the one that you were like so happy to be done with once you were done with it?
So I don't know about you, Johnny. For me, it was we did alternate day fasting for a while, and it skews your entire mindset towards eating. I don't know if you've ever done it, Rob. So 36-hour fast and then 12-hour eating window. So during the 12-hour eating window, you're eating between 6,000 and 10,000 calories, and then only water for the fast. And it's fine. Like you can function, and the fast days are quite good for getting stuff done. But you become a bit weird, and you wake up on the fast days like feeling like you've been hit by a bus. You start judging people. Like we've both had this experience of like sat in a library. We were both doing it during our finals years, and sat looking at people, and like you'd see someone eating a bag of crisps, and you'd be like, eating every day, like what a dick.
You're
like,
going to get so fat. It's 3 p.m. Why are you eating now? But then the days where you eat, because you have to eat basically 2 days worth of calories in a day, you have to cancel. Like I was skipping lectures. I wasn't leaving the house because eating's the thing. Like on my to-do list for today, it's eat all day. And then someone asks you to go out for a meal in the evening on your fast day, and you're like, I'm sorry, I'm not eating today. They're like, that's really weird, Johnny. So yeah, I think alternate day fasting is probably the most difficult diet to be consistent with, isn't it?
We did it for 10 weeks, I think, maybe more.
Yeah, long time.
Yeah, and like you start, I remember I was at a party, sort of 2 a.m., 30 hours into a fast, and someone's talking to you, and you're just, all you see is their face is just this pie, and like you can't listen to what they're saying. You're just waiting for
Tomorrow.
6 hours time.
Yeah, I have done a 36-hour fast once, off an epic cheat day, and it was fine. The second one, I was like, no, fuck this. I'm not like, I stopped halfway through. I used to be a big proponent of intermittent fasting, and if it works for your lifestyle, do it. Like it's something I introduce people to. Like, try this. It might be something that works for you. Especially like if you're very, very busy in the morning and you have like kids and you got to do this and you got to get out, like try and it takes one less thing, a little less stress in the morning. You can, eat a bigger lunch, and do that. But man, I have to say, I've not looked bigger muscular like wise than when I've been having breakfast and like sort of 3 meals a day. So I don't know, maybe those old bodybuilder dudes were right about some things.
I think even in terms of like behavior, when you miss breakfast, like the longer you fast, the more entitled you feel to have a big meal. And that if that's all day, then you're like, dinner's going to be like amazing. And even if you skip breakfast, you end up overeating at lunch, generally speaking. Maybe not initially, because when people skip breakfast, they have this like a large meal at lunch, like even slightly larger than their normal lunch, and they're full for ages. But that starts to decrease the longer you fast for. And then you develop this like insatiable hunger patterns that you can't ever really stop until you start eating breakfast again. So, I mean, it's something we've talked about in an article as well.
The dark side of intermittent fasting.
Yeah.
I would love to see a large-scale controlled trial on carb backloading. I think that would be pretty interesting to see whether any of the mechanisms are significant over the long run. I think, like, aside from adherence and stuff, I think Kiefer's got a lot of good ideas about it. It's just, it'd be good to see whether we can put it all together and see whether it works.
Yeah, I think that's the tough thing. You want to do a lot of studies on a ton of things, and then you're like, oh, well, we have to like do this on humans. Well, and it's like even with flexible dieting, that's been sort of, if it fits your macros, like you can eat a whole box of Pop-Tarts, but do we know the long-term effects? I mean, it is calories in, calories out. Like, I understand energy balance and all of that, but if it's shit energy versus like good energy, like, do we really? I mean, if I can eat Ben and Jerry's and eat tilapia all day and still look awesome when I'm 60, fuck yeah. But will I? Like, what does it do to your organs? We don't know because we haven't seen the long term, effects.
And all of those foods are fairly recent as well. Like, the highly processed fast food alternatives haven't been around for centuries and centuries. So we don't really have enough data to say if your diet is 75% plus of those foods, like, what does that actually do? Yeah. But I think we definitely try to move clients more towards as much as is possible with your levels of adherence, tastes, preferences, affordability, etc. Whole and processed foods, and then eat to taste, or flex those rules when social schedule allows or when you want to for whatever reason. But I think taking, if it fits your macros to its extreme, is just as bad as taking paleo to its extreme or anything to its extreme.
I agree that you guys are big proponents of the 80-20 principle, and my final question will be on that, something that I think many people assume that as a fitness coach, as a trainer, that like you're perfect, you're perfect, you're on point all the time, and the 80-20 principle is great. 80% of the time, hit your diet, eat the right things. 20% of the time could be you're on the road, you're on vacation. Like, those instances, have a little fun, be a little more flexible. But when you guys are at conferences or on the road or doing your own life, like, do you try and hit 80% of what you teach, or do you try to be 100% all the time because you feel like you need to do that for your clients?
So I actually took 3 months off training entirely. Well, like I did some sort of low maintenance stuff and YOLO'd the macros completely. And it was interesting that I think after having done it, I do think you need to put in the groundwork for the first few years to build some momentum, build some habits. And then what I found is that by letting go completely for 3 months, my body composition and strength didn't really change, because the same kind of habits stay with you, and you end up having built momentum with tracking for so long that you end up actually hitting your target calories without really trying. So it does allow you some flex, so you can kind of blast and cruise and not really worry about the consequences of it. I think the more of a deviation that your current plan and targets are from your disposition, so the more friction between those two things, that is going to cause like any lapse of willpower to cause you to just fall right back into your old patterns again. So I think the key really is repatterning rather than trying to be adherent to something that is considered, over and above what your baseline is.
I think for me, I'm at the stage where, as Yusef was saying, I think probably each of us have tracked food, especially for 3 or 4 years, maybe longer, to be honest, pretty much every single day, aside from, deliberate breaks. So even when we're in situations where we're at a conference or we're out for the day or filming for the full day or whatever, I think generally speaking, calories and protein is still there, still hitting our minimums. I think the stuff that we both struggle with is, the things that are easy to let slip, especially when you work for yourself, are, getting 2 hours of training in or getting to sleep on time, getting 8 hours of sleep every night, that probably some of our clients are more consistent with than us. I think what we manage to maintain, however, is the bigger picture focus, on average, what's my sleep looking like? On average, is my training progressing? On average, are my calories in line? Is my weight stable, etc.? And I think that viewpoint is probably what we have worked a lot on to maintain.
All right, I like that. Guys, I have had probably the most fun I've had recording a podcast in a very, very long time, talking about fears of sharks and squids and weird, freaky Friday things that, oh man, that question is going to haunt me all day. But if people want to know more about you, where can they find you guys online? Where can they find your podcast? I'm assuming you guys are on iTunes and all that, but where can people find more about Propane Fitness?
So propanefitness.com, firstly, and then that is linked to our Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, podcast. And then just to keep in touch with us more, we have a free ebook on the website, which is 22 simple rules for dramatic results. So what we talk about of distilling this complexity into simple things you can do every day, that's kind of our free introduction to our principles and ideas. So that'd be the best place to get started.
Awesome. Well, guys, I will have all that in the show notes, their Instagram, their Twitter, their Facebook. Are you guys Snapchatting? Are you on Snapchat yet?
We don't do Snapchat. No. We refuse. But yeah, our podcast is now on Android and Stitcher and all the other fashionable things. So
trendy.
Yeah, just no Periscope, no Snapchat.
Gotcha. Awesome. Well, I'll have all that in the show notes as well, so you guys can find that. SideQuestFitness.com/propane- or -fitness. I've been saying / for like the longest time and realized I was an idiot. It's a /. Whatever, internet age, you know how to find it. But I'll have it there for the show notes with everything mentioned and everything we talked about. Studies, I'll look those up and put that in there as well. What was the one you mentioned, Yusef?
The decision fatigue of the jury.
Yeah. I'll have that there as well. So, guys, thank you so much for coming on. I've been looking forward to this for a while, and it did not disappoint in any way whatsoever. So,
no, thanks for having us. It's been great.
Yeah, it's been fantastic.
Step up and you gotta get it fitness. Host Rob at the moment and the quest is you gotta check it and wreck it. You're breaking personal records, and with the help of the guests you won't be guessing on the lessons. That's a +5 fierce. Got a low-key bamf right here. You wanna meet him, there's no better way to greet him than to strike a boss pose. Take a look into the mirror.